Over the weekend, it dawned on me that I had not covered this particular album on Waterproof Records. And I was like, how has it taken me to episode 96 without talking about The and Dusk? Now, if you grew up in the United States, you might not be familiar with this band very much or this album, because one thing that I learned while researching this is that when this album came out in the UK, it debuted at number 2. And when it came out in the United States, it was like number 142. It was way down there. It just did not get that much attention in the US. Now, Matt Johnson, the musician, is a very iconic, artist who's done so much music and written for film that a lot of you might know who he is. But I just feel like in the grand scheme of things, there's a good chance that I'll be introducing this album to you for the first time. And I'm excited about that. I'm excited. I was in a conversation with a friend and the subject of muted trumpet came up. And that's when I was like, oh, you want to know one of my favorite sequences of muted trumpet on an album? It's on Dusk. And then I was like, okay, that is the answer to the question as to what your next episode will be. And so that's it. But let's get into it because I'm excited to talk about it. It is time to talk about the Dusk. Let's go.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna...
Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records with Jacob Gibbons.
So welcome back to my home, Waterproof Records home studio. I'm here to talk to you one-on-one, me and you. I'm going to talk about an album. You're going to learn a few things, or you're going to just enjoy this album that you already know very well. I look forward to these because I get to kind of geek out and share little clips of audio if you're listening to the episode. If you're watching it on YouTube, I know I don't play the audio clips for you, but I can't. You get hit with too many copyright strikes in the long form videos. So if you want to listen to the episode with the sound bites, I do include those over there. Welcome back to the show. I don't know if you got a chance to check out my previous episode where I had the artist known as 2 Feet or Bill Dess on the show, where he shared his story about getting sober recently and his new musical journey. It was a really, really great conversation. I know a lot of you who were listening to that episode probably were like, I'm not familiar with this artist. I wasn't very familiar with him either. But when I heard about his story, I felt like it was a super important thing to share and definitely fit in line with Waterproof Records and the positive energy about music and art and love and life that we're putting out there in the world. And we need now more than ever. Before we get into the album, I want to give a shout out to, of course, DistroKid, distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. That is your 30% off special VIP link from me. You use that, and for your first year, 30% off of your music being uploaded on DistroKid. When you upload, whether you're doing like a triple disc release or just one song, whatever you want to upload, you can put it everywhere. It's on all streaming platforms, including YouTube, and you can finally get your music heard by everyone. So you should definitely use distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof and get 30% off. That is a good amount of money to save on your upload. So you should use it. I use it. You should too. Okay. The. That's a band name. When you say it to somebody and they don't know, they're like, huh? What? Are you just making baby sounds? Are you just the? It is a very odd name. It's an unusual choice, and it dates back to 1979. I think actually Matt Johnson is recording demos and music in 1978, the year I was born. So this goes way back there in London, in England, where he's from. He's London-born Matt Johnson. But he creates this project, and it's primarily been him as a solo artist with rotating musicians through in and out of the band over the years. Some people have come back, new members have arrived, but it's been Matt Johnson since the very beginning, all the way up until he released Ensoulment in 2024, which had been like over 20 years since there had been a new The album. So still at it, still a prolific writer, has written music for movies, just done a ton of things in his life. And I would imagine over in the UK and in maybe other countries around the world, they're a lot more familiar with the than people in the US are. Now, I wouldn't say you don't know about the in Matt Johnson, because they did recently have a nice resurgence when their song This Is the Day lands on the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 soundtrack. It's featured prominently in the film, and that song has been in other projects and movies. It was famously in Empire Records. And so that piece of music has had a lot of legs. So you've undoubtedly heard This Is the Day. If you knew it was the Matt Johnson or not, I don't know. But Dusk in particular, this is an incredible album. It really is. But if you're not familiar with it and you know my style of music that I like to focus on, you might be a little surprised and be like, this seems a little out of character and category and style from what Jacob usually does, the rock music. You know, occasionally I have some more instrumental pieces or mellow pieces in there, but this is a very different, you know, it's a little bit out of left field in some ways. And in the same way that Living Color Time's Up was, is that this is as I'm building a lot of what will really make up my favorite genres and styles of music, I was young enough to let things in, and I let Dusk in a very, very powerful way at a young age. And it was a powerful album lyrically and content-wise as a kid, but I listened to it several times in a row before I recorded, and I was like, wow, holy shit. Like, the themes and elements of this album are even more profound and more powerful at my age now. Like, I thought I understood about lust and loneliness and these carnal desires that you kind of hate yourself for, and just the feeling of longing and getting what you desired and then not wanting. All of these elements of this album that seemed to ring true for me as a teenager. My God, I had yet to really step into adult life and to really comprehend a lot more of what was going on. I don't remember how Dusk lands in my brother Joel and I's lap. I don't know if somebody gave it to him. It was definitely through him that I even heard about the and Dusk. But he really enjoyed this album, and I did too. I would borrow it, and then it became a favorite of mine. But there's jazzy elements to it. Matt Johnson's voice is much more deep and resonant. And you know me, I've got a lot of higher pitched vocalists, and I was never really drawn in by bassy rock singers. Like the Crash Test Dummies thing never did it for me. And men who sang on deeper registers and songs usually didn't connect. But for some reason, this one did. And there's so much that I remember. It's 1993, so I'm probably 15. It's January of 1993. And Dusk, so much of it is about lust and loneliness, and there's just themes throughout it. And then there's these specks of light, of uplifting and hope and love that are peppered through it. This band, I'm not very well versed in Mind Bomb, and I'm not very well versed in Infected, and I'm not well versed in soul mining. And then after this album comes Hanky Panky, which is just basically a bunch of Hank Williams covers. And I think my brother had that one, but I didn't get into that one either. Now I've gone and listened to soul mining, and I've listened to Infected, and I've listened to Mind Bomb, and you have on Mind Bomb, you have Sinead O'Connor guest vocal on that. And then in soul mining, I think it's either soul mining or Infected, you have Nana Cherry, and you have all these other collaborations that are in there that he's working on. But one of the magic things that happens in this era of the is right around 1988, around the time of Mind Bomb, famous, legendary guitarist, songwriter, musician, Johnny Marr, co-songwriter of The Smiths, guitarist, really had created this iconic jangly pop guitar sound. And you've undoubtedly heard of Johnny Marr. He's released many solo albums. He's collaborated with tons of different projects, most notably The Smiths. And then he's in the for this short while. And then he also worked with the Pretenders for a bit, and Modest Mouse. And the list goes on. Talking Heads. He's worked with Beck. Johnny Marr has released a lot of solo stuff, and he's toured on his own, and he's just a great musician, super talented. He's Irish born. I mean, he's born to Irish parents in England, in Manchester. And as I learned from Jack Bates, he's a Manc. He's a Manc who's got Irish parents, who's a Manc with Irish blood. So he's from Manchester, and he is an incredible musician, and everything he touches has a signature Johnny Marr sound. And I think that that's what makes Dusk in particular such a landmark for me, is this is really the last The album that Johnny Marr is involved with, and it was a short window that he was involved. It really only is Mind Bomb to Dusk that we get his talents on there. And the atmosphere that they create on this record is absolutely perfect. And I'll start off, let's get into it a little bit. So the album Dusk released on January 25th, 1993. Sony Records, and like I said earlier, it was more popular in the UK, and in the USA, it was 142 on the charts. I mean, in the UK, number 2, in the US, 142. This is, like I mentioned, the last album that Johnny Marr is in the band on. And then the album cover, which is, for me, very significant because I had countless hours looking at that cover and that artwork. That cover of Dusk is done by Andy Dog Johnson, who's Matt Johnson's brother. He does the artwork. And there's something about it. It just creates the perfect kind of this agonized, reddish figure who's over a city with like the swirls of his mind and just the kind of the self-torture that's going on Dusk before we get into the track by track. But another thing that I found while I was researching this is that one of the songs on here, Slow Emotion Replay, was the 94th best-selling single in Iceland. That's incredible. So Icelanders, if you're listening to the show, you're like, I know who the is. I know about Slow Emotion Replay. But again, did not get the credit where credit is due, I think, in the United States. The first song on the album is called True Happiness This Way Lies. I'm actually going to bring up the lyrics of True Happiness This Way Lies because the album opens in such an unusual way. It has kind of this spoken word thing. There's even crowd sounds in there, like laughing and awing, like we're watching some kind of person on a live stage give a performance, a monologue about life and experience. And then it drifts into a single solo acoustic guitar and Matt Johnson's isolated voice talking about the pursuit of happiness. And in the flesh sense, primarily. It starts out, it says, hey man, I got what you need. And have you ever wanted something so badly that it possessed your body and your soul through the night and through the day until you finally get it, and then you realize that it wasn't what you wanted after all. And then those self-same sickly little thoughts now go and attach themselves to something or somebody new, and the whole goddamn thing starts all over again. If you've never listened to this opening, as a teenager, I had an inkling of these feelings. But having lived so many more years of my life, it is such a haunting, opening, powerful statement about searching to fulfill desire and lust and feeding that side of you that chases something, chases fulfillment in one another, in a body, in a drink, in drugs, just chasing it. And I remember feeling a lot of guilt for when he says, and the whole goddamn thing starts all over again. I had a real problem with goddamn back then. I'd kind of been taught that when it came to swear words, that was just about as bad as you could get. Now, I have no problem with it now. It doesn't bother me in the slightest. But it was amazing to think about how many songs that would have that in it, and I would feel very uncomfortable. I would turn down. I would feel a lot of guilt for enjoying it. And so a lot of times I would skip this song when I would put it on. I would go right to the second track. I would skip it because it was like a poem that went into a very solemn acoustic performance where he's, tapping on the acoustic guitar a little bit to get that rhythm going. But now when I listen to it, it has such a huge impact on how I see things and how I've experienced things. And it is a very vulnerable piece of music. And it's how Dusk begins. Dusk. This feeling of wandering as the sun goes down in the night, the city lights, looking for something, looking for someone to make you feel good, but to just make you feel. I told you I love this record. And I'm going to take some time looking up things and looking up different things as we go through, because I don't want to breeze past this time, because I think it's worth talking about. Then we get to track 2, Love is Stronger Than Death. This is a wonderful song. The sound of the acoustic guitar, the message, the hopefulness, here come the blue skies, love is stronger than death, the way that he says love, love, love. It's very moving. And maybe to some it seems cheesy or kind of syrupy, but I love this song, and I've just recently learned how to play it on my guitar, and I was so happy. I was like, I'd love to find a way to re-record a cover of this or something. It is just fantastic. And it really, for me, is probably the first song on the album growing up, because I would always begin it on Love is Stronger Than Death. And it's got this organ in it, opens up, just feels like anything is possible and that we're going to be okay. And there's spots of that on this album, because a lot of the album kind of feels lurking and sad and lonely. But this is a shining moment. And I'm so grateful that Matt Johnson put that piece of music on here, and he does it again on the end of the record. He kind of opens us up with this Love is Stronger Than Death notion, and then I think he does it also on the end. So we spend a lot of time in the darker places and the lustful places, and that's exactly where we get to on track 2, Dogs of Lust. Now, this song was released as the lead single. It's kind of a different change in tone for the band. It was lighter. The harmonica is played by Johnny Marr in it. They released a music video, which was directed by Tim Pope, who was famously a music video director of like every video by The Cure ever, and went on to direct some films as well. He directed The Crow, City of Angels, but very prolific filmmaker. But he works with them making this music video. And this is something that probably comes across on MTV on 120 Minutes, and maybe the American audience gets a chance to see Dogs of Lust. I don't know how well it performed overseas, but here I do think there was some airplay to this. And I do think that Love is Stronger Than Death also got released as a single. Those were really the two that got released off this album. But yeah, here they come, the Dogs of Lust. These feelings overtaking you. The heat is rising slowly. And this is another one of those songs that as I play it for you, you might be kind of surprised to hear that this is in the catalog of some of Jacob's favorite music. I can honestly say that The Dusk is in my top 10 albums of all time. That's why I was kind of surprised that when it dawned on me, I had yet to talk about it. I think it's so easy to get caught up in the overarching large ones that really consume a lot of my brain power and my reenactment videos that I do on social media. But when I first started making those videos, I remember I was trying to tackle albums that meant a lot to me. And I remember I made a quick little video about how much Dusk by The means to me. And I think I put it on Twitter back in 2021, and the band retweeted it. Matt Johnson retweeted it. And I was pretty excited. This is back before it was the garbage platform of X that it is now. This is back when it was still somewhat a salvageable place. But, there's a lot of the fans that are probably going to say, well, Mind Bomb's better, or Infected's better, or, this or that's better. Soul Mining's better. But I again, that's your journey with this band. And since this band got a lot more attention where you live, there was probably a lot more exposure and time that you could spend with it. But this was just like this beam of light. And it was like, this is Dusk. It's arriving in your lap right now at this chapter in your life. You're going to be struggling with being a teenager who's struggling with sexual desire and wants and lust. And I mean, look, let's get real. Okay. This is adult subject matter. So if their kids are listening in the car, this is me being a little bit more vulnerable, but this is 1993. So yeah, that's your warning right now. If you've got anybody young in the car, please just be prepared as I'm about to talk about this. This is 1993 and I'm a Christian kid. I'm going to church. And pornography and things of that nature, this is before the internet exists. And this is only in dirty magazines and adult movies that you could get your hands on and things like that. And this has been introduced to me as a church-going kid, a kid living in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and also struggling with a longing and desire and lust and want and sins of the flesh and things that made me feel terrible, made me feel really bad as a human being for like, I'm wrong, I'm broken, I'm evil for wanting to see naked women, or I'm a monster for wanting to see, people having sex, or that I get turned on by that. And this album really does sing lyrics and refrains about that possession that overtakes you, that lust, that insatiable, like, I need to do something about this. And then once you take care of business, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, that sadness that washes over you, or that guilt, or that loneliness, or that shame, it is really an odd thing. And I can only speak from my own experience as a male who grew up in a religious household, who grew up with a lot of shame associated with these things, that being introduced to an artist who's talking about them and shining a light on that this is part of the human experience, this lust and loneliness and longing and these feelings. It was like I knew that I was being seen by this, but I didn't want anybody to see me. It's a very hard thing when you feel like you're evil for those things. And I'm not saying that all sexual desire or lust is healthy. I just think that I had a really poor balance and poorly understood idea of myself and what was okay and what was good and bad. Now, this tangent is important, I think. I know this is a little bit personal. You're like, wow, Jacob, we didn't need to get into it. But growing up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, pornography is, for the most part, illegal before the internet. You know, you could get a dirty magazine, but anything that was the real deal was like, you knew a guy whose uncle had something that was from out of state, or somebody got their hands on something. So again, growing up in a climate where it was so unavailable, you know what the funny thing is? I feel like I saw a comedian talk about this, but it is so true. I'm apologies for taking from the material. There was something about you would find dirty magazines in the woods. That was a thing. For you who are too young, for whatever reason, there would be some dad or uncle or somebody out there, somebody who had a collection that they would one day just toss in a box or a bag in the woods. So as a young adolescent, you'd be walking or hiking through woods with your friends, and you come across old waterlogged adult magazines. It was crazy. It was the craziest kind of buried treasure, but it was truly a phenomenon when that material was in a physical media form, when it was in printed paper magazine form. But it was just so funny how you would be wandering through the wilderness and you'd be like, wow, a stack of old Penthouse magazines that somebody threw away. And, if you were lucky enough, they'd be in good enough condition to keep. This is kind of one of those conversations that it's like, I know that I have a huge audience and platform, and it's one thing to tell this story to a group of friends or to talk about it. It is a little, it's crazy how much it digs up a little bit of that, the shame, even though I'm decades past all that, and I know it's completely normal. But yeah, a lot of stigma around it growing up, and let's get back to Dusk. Stop talking about all that. Okay, track number 4, This Is the Night. I loved this song so much, I actually taught myself it on piano. I went down in my house and we had a piano when I was growing up. I sure as hell miss this piano. My parents sold it when they were moving out of California, and I did not have a home to be able to take it. And I actually know who they sold it to, and I've thought about if I ever had the money, I would reach out to this person and be like, can I buy it back from you? Because this piano was a bartender's, an old saloon piano. It's from the late 1800s, and it was an upright, and it had the original ivory keys. Some had popped off, but instead of 3 pedals on the bottom, it had a 4th pedal. And when you hit the 4th pedal, it turned it into a harpsichord sound, like a tinny. It did something to the strings that then made it sound a lot more like a ragtime piano. So not harpsichord, but ragtime. So it got to this different ragtime sound when you hit the 4th pedal. So I would sit down on the piano all the time, and I would play those opening notes of This Is the Night, and I would hit the ragtime pedal, and it just sounded so cool. And what I wouldn't give to have somehow kept that piano, but maybe I'll be lucky enough to find its way back to me again. But This Is the Night is just... It has that upright bass, the bounciness of the piano notes that go through it. I love it so much. And he comes in, he's like, how many whores have walked through that door, leaned by my side and climbed in my mind and taken me. Oh, so many good memories of how much I enjoyed that song. That would definitely be one that if I was going to sit you down to listen to Dusk, I would probably want to show you This Is the Night. Definitely ended up on a lot of mixtapes for sure. And I'd say it's pretty jazzy, pretty accessible. I think anybody could listen to that song and be like, yeah, I dig it. I dig what he's doing here. All right, let's get on to Slow Emotion Replay. All right, so this is a great song, and this is the one that I was talking about earlier. Slow Motion Replay, 94th best-selling single in Iceland. So Icelanders, you know what's up. But the number one thing that I remember about the song, more than anything, is like I told you about the religious guilt, is listening to it, and he says the lyric, he says, we reach out and pray to a deaf, dumb, and blind God who never explains. And again, that was a guilty lyric. Matt Johnson would definitely tackle a lot of the hypocrisy and horrible things the church and Christianity had done, and the oppression from, God-fearing people, and, where he grew up. And when I meet people who are from England, they don't have the same kind of Christian culture that you do in the United States, at least not the level that we have it. I mean, I'm sure there are church-going people over there for sure, but the whole Protestant thing and the way that America absorbed Christianity is very, very different. And so you could probably grow up in that part of the world and not have had a tremendous amount of it be part of your everyday life. At least that's what I've come to understand. Whereas here, if you grow up in the bulk of this country, especially in the middle, it's a big part of your life and your universe. And so to hear him say, a deaf, dumb, and blind God who never explains, I remember being like, oof, that's another turn the volume down moment. That's another, I shouldn't be hearing that. You can't be criticizing God like that. And yet, true, definitely sentiments and lyrics that I hear, and as I moved into older adolescence and 20-somethings, and I began to really be at war with faith and belief and what I stood for. And it's like, you should be free to express any kind of frustration that you have with an idea of God. It is okay to be frustrated with the injustices of the world and to claim, like, how could a supernatural being look down on this and let us just suffer in silence and not intervene? Matt Johnson had every right to put that in a song and express it, but young Jacob wasn't prepared to hear it, but I enjoy it now. I listen to it now and I enjoy it. So now we get to two back-to-back pretty groovy songs because we've got some sick-ass wah-wah guitar coming from Johnny Marr on them. But the first one is Helpline Operator. It opens up with that muted trumpet. Now, this isn't the muted trumpet I was talking about that led me to remember this, but there's definitely some good use of some horns on this album done in the perfect way. I don't know if I've ever mentioned on this show before, but I'm not a fan of the saxophone. Not a fan. It can be used delicately around Christmas time for like, somebody playing "Oh Holy Night" on a saxophone on a corner in New York. Then I like that, but I usually don't enjoy saxophone in songs. But I do enjoy other horned instruments, trumpet, trombone, when they're used in the right way in songs. And there's something very film noir about a muted trumpet, something very back alley. And Helpline Operator starts with that muted trumpet and then a little thumping bass, a doom, 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 and just kind of like starts and brings you in slowly. And then comes that wah-da-bam, wah, 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 just this really, really catchy guitar lick. And away you are on Helpline Operator, and more of that Johnny Marr magic on this record. The second in the double whammy wah-wah, you get Sodium Light Baby. Now, this song, Sodium Light Baby, I don't think I knew when I was a kid that sodium light was the gas vapor orangish city lights. Like when you're in a city and you have to light up streets or parking lots and they can last for, so incredibly long. So I think when I saw that title, I don't know if I knew what sodium light was. It wouldn't be until years later that I remember filming something and my friend explaining to me, he's like, yeah, that orangish glow on everything, that's sodium. That's sodium light. And I'm like, oh, it does have such a signature thing. And there's something about Sodium Light Baby, this song, that really does exude that feeling of walking around a city at night. Because the look I'm talking about, the feeling I'm talking about when you're bathed in that golden orange warmth light. And that when you're out and you might be getting yourself into some trouble. You might be a little drunk. You might be putting yourself in a bad situation. You might be in a bad place, a bad part of town, or somewhere that you really shouldn't be. And I definitely, in my years of living in LA and being out late, I many a times had that feeling of kind of being in the city light and being in places that I probably shouldn't be and being in danger. I'm hoping this resonates for you. Because I'm only able to speak from my experience. I'm only able to communicate kind of what life did to me and like where I found myself sometimes. I don't know. There is a dark loneliness that can come from being at night lit up by sodium light. You can find yourself standing there smoking a cigarette, staring off into space and having both the right mind, the right place, and wherewithal to think, I shouldn't be here. And then another part of you that goes, but I want to be here. What a strange thing life is. What a strange thing life is. And then we lead into track 8, which is a little bit more of a sneaky instrumental piece. He speaks through it a little bit. It's just more, he keeps repeating the refrain, come closer to me. And it has this kind of sneaky, skulky, in the dark, in the shadows feeling. And that's so much of Dusk. So much of Dusk is this. But we're about to come out of it. We're about to come out of it, right? We had a lot of the, I don't want to say sleazy. There is a sleaze. Because sleaziness can be enticing sometimes. And I don't know if that's just because that comes from a kid who was raised in a very, what would you call that? Pristine. Everything's like very sterilized. It's all got to be pure and good. We can't have the evil forces of the devil or heavy metal, and everything has to be clean, and you can't read books with the adult subject matter and all this like cleaning up of everything around your environment. I don't know if that's what ends up making you long for a little bit of the disheveled and the dirty and the disorganized mess of existence, or to find yourself into unsafe places. But it definitely does. And Lung Shadow's Skulks come closer to me like so much of temptation and desire and lust does. But Bluer Than Midnight, track 9, we only have 2 songs left on the album, and Bluer Than Midnight, this is a plea. This is the save me from myself. This one was playing in my car on my drive home tonight to come and record this, and this is a powerful piece of music. The candles are lit, the curtains are drawn, there's still no sign of rain or dawn. Our limbs touch, our limbs entwine, but the ghosts that haunt me won't leave my mind. Save me. Save me from myself. Wow. Song Bluer Than Midnight, another perfect use of trumpet here. That opening gentle piano just brings me right back. And then the end of the song ends with, why can't love ever touch my heart like fear does? I mean, I feel seen. Not so much now because I do feel that love has touched my heart many times in my life. I've absolutely experienced love, and I've loved and I've been loved in return. But there was something about the messy process of growing up and maturing and being so afraid, so much fear inside. I had a lot of it. And that verse, when I sang it in my car, I just felt all the emotions well up inside of me. And I was like, that is a strong, strong turn of phrase. And so this song is the kind of on your knees moment. You've had enough. You've spent enough nights lonely, longing, letting things go past as you look for the next best thing. And then you're just kind of pleading for a sense of awareness and calm within your own spirit and your own body, and a ability to just stop and to just be and to not chase and to stand still. I know that this episode got a lot more still and solemn in a lot of ways, but I hope you'll give a Dusk a spin. It may not do anything for you, because if you were to say to me, Mind Bomb, it's all about, or one of their other albums, and I would go put it on, I'd be like, it's good, but this album is a very specific window of my life. Very. It takes me right back, and I would revisit this year after year after year after year as one of those important albums that I discovered. And I've talked about it to people, and they're like, I don't know that one. But now is my chance to share it with thousands of people, and that makes me very happy. The last song, Lonely Planet, is the one that is the least like everything else on here. I mean, like I said at the beginning, it's a little bit of a bookend, like Love is Stronger Than Death. Lonely Planet is, if you can't change the world, change yourself. This one has the most like, you can do something, you can change the world, you can change yourself, you can make things better. Life is short, the world's too great. All the things that he's singing and all the instrumentation, they swell and they rise and they get bigger, and they're like, it's going to be okay. This is the morning after the dusk. This is the last piece of music on the album that says, we've been through hell, we've been lost, we've stood on street corners smoking cigarettes in the sodium vapor light, but you know what? The sun rose. I'm going to go home, take a shower, and I'm going to start again. I'm going to start anew. because it is possible to change. It is possible to do great things. It is possible to live and love and hope and dream. And Lonely Planet really maybe snaps you out of it a little bit, of this night of the tortured soul, of that sodium light, of that muted trumpet, walking around like a film noir detective looking for love in all the wrong places. You know, there's so much of this album you can feel like, and there I was in the back alleys, you know, there she was, a dame I'd never seen before. Oh, that was fun though. I really do enjoy getting the opportunity to share these things with you. And if I stared off into space blankly as I consider those dark places, don't worry about me. I'm okay. I've survived a long life and gone through millions of things like you have too. I know those of you out there, everybody has their deepest, darkest places that they've been. Everybody has their places where they thought, I don't know how I got myself in this, or found themselves in harm's way, or, you know, seedy locations. Life is complex and confusing. And, you know, if you're young, just take care of yourself out there and be safe and be careful. The world's too great. Life's too short, like he says in Lonely Planet. But I think that that's where I'm going to leave it on the Dusk. I'm pretty sure I covered every song on the album. I'm hoping I did, because I made a huge mistake several episodes ago where I talked about Living Color Time's Up and I skipped a whole damn song, which was one of my favorite on the album. But I was looking on the list and I guess I didn't remember to hit it. But I think I had them all written out here and I wanted to talk about those. So that, my friends, is Dusk by the. Thank you again for sitting with me here in the Waterproof Records studios for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Definitely a different mode and mood that I brought this time around. But music has a powerful effect and can really bring you to some different places psychologically. And, you know, in order to do this show and really get into what these songs make me feel, I mean, sometimes I do kind of have to show everything and be a little bit more vulnerable about my life experience, because, you know, it'll probably speak to some of you out there, some of who have felt those things that I shared before, that you're not alone. You know, I've talked a lot about how I want to shine more light on mental health. And the only way we're going to get there is if it's okay to talk a little bit more about the more broken, beaten down parts of you and how you've survived them and come through them on the other end. So I have, and now I'm here with you to talk about amazing music. So thank you for joining me on this episode of Waterproof Records. And I want to give a huge shout out to Pantheon Podcast. Thank you, Pantheon Podcast, for letting me be a part of your network. And amongst so many other amazing music podcasts out there, they have so many. And it's just great to be a part of the Pantheon Podcast Network, to have Waterproof Records and amongst so many other great shows. And thank you for helping keeping this show going as we continue to grow and do things together. Still working on a very exciting event coming up here in Los Angeles in June. Details should be coming out on that very, very soon. So stay tuned. And of course, don't forget distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. And you will be able to get 30% off your first year. Sorry, I'm getting into my own head here at the end. I'm already like replaying and in my head going, oh, what did you talk about, Jacob? But you know what? You got to just leave things out there like that. You got to let it be. So with that, I'm going to say thanks for talking about the Dusk with me on Waterproof Records. I will see you next time.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna